Since Val Kilmer died recently, I went into his file on my computer. I was moving some things around and just checking some things out. And I stumbled across another file within it, and it had to do with Val Kilmer's relative. Now, Shannon Mead, my friend for many years, turned me onto this story several years ago, and I put it in the Kilmer file. And I guess since he died recently, it piqued my interest again. And it has to do with one of his relatives. And this is like a Who Do You Think You Are television show where you go from generation to generation. This involves a man by the name of Robert Lee Kilmer, who was actually Val Kilmer's grandfather's brother. I know this is a reach, but it's a good story. So this incident took place in 1959, and it started in Fresno, California, which is about 200 miles north of Los Angeles, and ends in West Hollywood, California. And okay, so Robert Kilmer he was living in Fresno, and he was employed as a laborer for a box company, manual labor. Now, the case started unraveling in Inglewood, which is a city that's directly adjacent to Los Angeles, on a street called Prairie Avenue. And that is actually where Prairie Avenue like dead ends to Inglewood Memorial Park, which is where Edgar Bergen is. And oh my gosh, so many people, Gypsy Rose Lee and Ella Fitzgerald and LaWanda Page, and so many people are buried in Inglewood, just over the fence from where this incident came to law enforcement attention. So it was next to a Little League baseball field that police found a 1958 black and white sedan that had been parked on the street. They noticed it for a couple of days in a row. So the officer decided to place a parking citation on the vehicle to warn the owner of the vehicle that it was going to be towed very soon if it's not moved. When he walked up to the vehicle, he noticed it stunk. There was a bad odor. And he peeked into the vehicle, and he couldn't see anything, saw some things, but no people, so figured it was the trunk, and they pried open the trunk, and they found the body of a woman. A badly decomposed woman who appeared to have been stuffed in the trunk. She was only wearing a white brassiere, and it was clear that she was severely beaten. It wasn't clear at the time, but she was shot twice in the back of the head. She was also missing a front tooth. Now, she was wearing a gold watch, which had stopped at 11:30. And not clear if it was PM or AM, but more than likely it was PM. As we go on, you'll understand more. But searching the car, they found the tooth and blood in the back seat of the car, the interior of the car. Also in the car were a pair of red capri pants and a sweater. So, not knowing who she was, initially classed as a Jane Doe number 7. And John or Jane Doe is what they name a victim of a crime or a body that they found that's deceased at the medical examiner that they can't identify. And they named them like John Doe 10, John Doe 11, John Doe 12 as they find them. There wasn't any identification in the car, and her purse was never discovered. No shoes were discovered either. Robbery was ruled out because of the gold watch that was still on her hand. Oh, and the car was registered to her husband, who lived up in Fresno. Her name was Mrs. Mary Prestridge. She was 26 years old. She was a mother of 7 and 2-year-olds, and they said she collected salt and pepper shakers and oriental figurines, and she attended some beauty school classes as well. She was 26 years old. They did identify her positively by, she had the word love tattooed on a finger and a scar on her left heel. So they knew who she was. The last time she was seen was the Friday before at her grandfather's place of business called Arthur's Cafe on Belmont Avenue in Fresno. I looked it up, and there's no business at that intersection anymore. It's pretty much a field with a few homes around it at the time. So I don't know if it was like a corner restaurant or a truck stop or something like that. But either way, the business that was there in 1959 was called Arthur's Cafe, and it's long gone. But that was owned by her grandfather. And quite often, Mary would go to this restaurant at nighttime and help her grandfather close it up for the night. So that night she did go, and she brought her children with her too. And her husband showed up after he got off work. He was a truck driver, and he was too tired to hang around, so he picked up the two children who were with her and took them home with her. Now, Mary was last seen talking to a young man at the restaurant who was later identified as Robert Kilmer, who was an ex-Marine. He left the bar, or she left the bar, and Kilmer, this has been about 8 or 9 p.m., I think. Kilmer left a minute later. They say a minute later. And also, Kilmer did have a record with the police department for contributing to the delinquency of a minor. This was a year prior to this. And he and Mary Prestridge had been friends since they were kids. He would say, I guess they were romantically involved, as I understand it. Robert's family used to rent the back house at Mary's family's house, or something to that effect. But they've known each other for several years. Some say they were childhood sweethearts, which would make sense. But the last thing, she was last seen leaving the bar at 9 p.m. That was a Friday night. The last thing she said to her grandfather was, "Good night, Daddy, I'll see you tomorrow." So that must have been her nickname for him. And Kilmer left about a minute later. And when she didn't return home, the husband wasn't that alarmed, because he thought it was a Saturday, thought that she had gone to visit relatives. But during the next few days, when she didn't return home, friends and neighbors were questioned about Mary's disappearance. Her husband claimed that they had absolutely no marital difficulties, and everyone in the neighborhood said everything had been going along fine. Friends and neighbors supported his story, saying the couple lived quietly and appeared to have no serious quarrels. Neighbors said that she kept to herself, but was as nice a neighbor as anyone could possibly want. If someone needed a helping hand, Mary was always there. And her mother said, "I don't know why I'm getting ahead of myself just a little bit." Since Robert Kilmer was the last person to see Mary alive, he was being sought for questioning. He hadn't been seen since her disappearance, and his motorcycle was found abandoned. I guess that gave the police enough to get a search warrant for his house. And when they did search his house, they found boots and a pair of jeans that had blood on them. Therefore, it was very likely that he killed Mary. So they did an all-points bulletin looking for him. He was 5'7", 150 pounds, dark brown hair, which they say he combs his hair straight back. Gas receipts were found in that car where the body was found, and they were dated the night she disappeared, and were signed by John Prestridge, her husband, well, by name, because that's who the car was actually titled to. But the signature for the gasoline didn't match her husband's handwriting. So they were attempting to contact the gas station and ask the employee to identify who it was. I've found a lot of information about this case, but I've never found an answer to that one. She and the car had been missing since July 3rd. Now, she's believed to have been murdered on the night of July 3rd or the morning of July 4th. 11:30 p.m. makes sense because her watch had stopped, but that would have made a very short period of time that she left her grandfather's bar and at the time she was murdered. So it may have been 11:30 in the morning, possibly. Now, Kilmer's mother said she hadn't seen him since that night. Now, Kilmer showed up at the apartment of his friend called Donald Decker, of someone he had grown up with in Fresno, and moved to West Hollywood with his mother. He and his mother shared a one-bedroom apartment on the street called Poinsettia Drive in West Hollywood. And Kilmer asked if he could stay a few days. It was weird, Donald thought, because he hadn't seen him in several years. And actually, when he first opened the door, he didn't recognize him. But he was a drugstore employee, actually, Decker, and consulted with his mother. Not knowing, of course, that he was a fugitive, they agreed to let him stay there in this one-bedroom apartment. Mrs. Decker said that she thought Kilmer was a nice boy. Now, he did carry a weapon, Kilmer did, and that concerned the mother, but Kilmer told her he was a member of the Secret Service and he was on vacation, and for some reason she believed that. Now, on the second night after he arrived, Kilmer, he was probably unraveling, feeling the guilt because he knew the police were after him and was probably settling in what happened. He actually showed Decker an article about the killing of Mary Prestridge and told Decker that he had done it. Kilmer said that she was a childhood sweetheart of him and married another man and had 2 children with him. Kilmer claimed that he was intimate with Mary that night in the car, the night that he picked her up at her grandfather's restaurant. They were intimate in the car. It's Lover's Lane, where they used to park back in the day, a dark street where you can go and make out. And she said to him if she couldn't be with him, she wanted to die. And then when Decker asked him why he did it, he said, I'd do anything she wanted me to do. Now, it was supposed to be a pact, and after Mary was killed, he was supposed to do himself, but he was too scared to do it. So we stuffed her in the back of the trunk and drove to Inglewood and parked her in a street and left her there. So Kilmer was there for several days after he told Decker what he had done, and Decker was freaking out too because he was afraid that his mother was going to get hurt. So he contacted the police, and I guess they had made a plan. The mother was supposed to be at the bar on the corner, which is actually still like a coffee shop today. But the mother was at this bar. When Donald Decker realized that she was out of the house, he told the police that she's at the corner bar. So the police went to the corner bar, got the key from her, and went to the apartment building, which is it's still there, and it's just 20 yards from the bar where she was. So after she gave the police the key to the house, she said that Kilmer had been in bed all day with a cold. Now, they say about 50 police officers surrounded the building, and at this point, Kilmer didn't know that was happening on the outside yet. So these three detectives went up the front stairs of the apartment, which is right on the street. Their unit was right on the street, used the key to unlock the door and hurled the door open and shouted at Kilmer to surrender, informing him that he was surrounded. Now, being concerned of what might happen, the police got on the bullhorn, or a loudspeaker, and informed everyone else in the building that they should lock the doors to their apartment, stay in their apartment. So this attracted a crowd of 500. I heard another report that it was 1,000 people. But if you see how tiny this street is, it's unimaginable that 500 people and 50 police officers could be in front of this tiny house. I can't imagine they'd even fit there, but according to several reports, that is the case. Apparently, now this is where it gets a little bit tricky. They entered the house and heard a gunshot. So they retreated and blasted the house with tear gas. They said from the front and actually from the alley side, their side windows, and hit it that way. Now, it either happened where they heard the gunshot first and then they decided to do the tear gas, or they did the tear gas and then the gunshot happened. Either way, it was a standoff for, I think it was like 2 hours. And all this crowd were attracted, and since there were gunshot heard, they were like ducking behind cars and things like that. But with gas masks on, they stormed the apartment and found him on the floor dead. What he used to do it was nearby his hand. So it was quite clear that he was by himself when it happened, and there was no one else suspected of what had happened. But he was still alive. So they took him by ambulance to what's called the Citizens Emergency Medical Group, which is still in a medical building on Santa Monica Boulevard, probably less than a mile from this apartment building where it happened. However, Kilmer died en route and was pronounced dead at 7:05 p.m. And I'll put his death certificate up so you can see where he was pronounced. And the cause of death was intracerebral hemorrhage, perforating gunshot wound to the head. Now, it was also revealed that Kilmer had bought this gun in a pawn shop about a week before Mary Prestridge's disappearance. Now, Donald Decker said, all I can say is thank God no innocent person was hurt. Just think 5 days that he stayed there, sleeping in the same bed, actually. I don't know where the mother slept, on a sofa or something like that, or maybe they slept in a spare bed in the living room and the mother got the bedroom, I don't know. But they were sharing a bed, and Decker was saying, imagine spending all this time sleeping next to a human time bomb. Now, what's interesting is that the woman who was married to Mary's grandfather, which would be his second wife, so it's like the step-grandmother. The step-grandmother said that Kilmer didn't suffer enough for what he did. I'm sorry they didn't take him alive and sent him to the gas chamber. Mary was a good girl. She was a good mother who never hurt anyone. Now, Kilmer's mother, in turn, went so far as to blame Mary and said if it hadn't been for her, it wouldn't have happened. Now, both Mary Prestridge's and Robert Kilmer's funerals were held in the same funeral home in Fresno called the Lyle Funeral Home. And both of their funerals were published. His was on the Monday and hers was on the Wednesday after the shootout. And Mary is buried at Holy Cross Catholic Cemetery in Fresno, and Robert Kilmer is buried in Belmont Memorial Park. And both of them had funerals in the chapel at the Lyle Funeral Home. So I just think that's a fascinating story on its own. But the fact that it involved a relative of Val Kilmer's, granted it's a little bit of a reach for an entertaining story. Entertaining, I guess it's what we do though. It is taking time out and spending time in someone else's misery. That's like pretty much what I do. But that's the way it is. So rest in peace, Mary Prestridge, and God bless you and your families. And I didn't know this also, that Val Kilmer had a brother who drowned, which I don't know, he was 15 or something like that. And I thought that was interesting too. And did you know that Val Kilmer grew up near the Spahn Ranch in Chatsworth, California? And Kilmer said that he used to go horseback riding there. And he said that Shorty Shea, who was another victim of the Manson murders, he hooked up Kilmer when they went horseback riding on a horse. There is a degree of separation there, or a degree of association with that. So with the sound of the wind chimes and the wind kind of kicking up a little bit, I'm going to take off. I hope that you felt this compelling enough. There is a Patreon page for what I do below in the links, and if you want to support what I do for a couple of bucks a month, it's very much appreciated. You get exclusive content, you get what I do before everyone else, about a day before everyone else. And I post things that are there specifically for Patreon, and I also do a monthly question and answer video exclusive to the Patreons, and everyone who asks any questions gets an answer from me, and I communicate by messages there, direct messages as well. And those videos of the Q&As usually last about an hour or an hour and a half. So anyway, but that's to become a Patreon. That's in the link below, which is just like a couple dollars a month subscription. If you can see it in your heart, it's very much appreciated. As is your time, as is your attention. And until next time.
You heard me.